Well, welcome to part 2 of the video about WCG 104, the Leyland Tiger Cub that was the first vehicle in the eventual collection of the Friends of King Alfred buses. This video tells the story of what happened after the bus arrived in my hands and how it came back to Winchester and how it became the catalyst for the starting of the Friends of King Alfred buses itself in 1985. So our bus is now sitting in Gossynon depot of the South Wales Transport Company alongside Leylands and Leyland Nationals and Fords and other buses, but it had a place there, it was able to stay there and I could look after it. And the first job was to try and get some of the mechanical sorted out, and I was very lucky to be able to persuade some of my friends and colleagues to come and help, and particularly the chap who was depot engineer in Swansea's Brunswick Street depot. He said, "Oh, I'll come and work on it," and he spent many hours under the bus, underfloor engine of course, dealing with the various mechanical issues with the aim of us being able to, in due course, drive it back to England, back to Winchester. And obviously, if we were going to take it back to Winchester, it was all painted up in Einan's colours, a bit rough and ready, but it was complete in their colours. But I wanted it to be in King Alfred livery. So we set to work. My university friends came down from different parts of the country and spent weekends and evenings, and we rubbed it down. A lot of Nitromors was sloshed about, paint stripper, and then we obtained some paint of the right colour of its last livery, which was the single green, which is not the livery it's in now, but it was the colour scheme that it ran in for the last few years of its life with King Alfred. And we duly painted it, and Mr. Chisnell, Bob Chisnell, gave us a couple of transfers to go on the side of it, King Alfred transfers, and we had a King Alfred blind, and so we set to work, and we didn't do a bad job of it actually. It looked quite presentable. It had one or two things. I remember it had back here, it had the one-man operated sign, "Play as you enter," in a rubber gasket, which we left, we just painted over it. But otherwise it was complete. We didn't have the wheel discs, the trims originally. We had to find and get hold of those in due course, but otherwise it was more or less as you see it. With great excitement we worked through the summer of 1981, and in the autumn we had already decided to hire another King Alfred bus, one that we subsequently purchased for 419 and Leyland Panther, from Rees and Williams, of nearby another South Wales independent company. Now that's another story really, but 419 was brought from South Wales to Winchester to run a tour on a Saturday in November 1981. We had organised for people to book up for it, so it had a full load of interested enthusiasts booked to come on it, and they all appeared in the Broadway in Winchester. And meantime we had driven the bus back from Gossynon to Winchester. Quite an exercise, first time I'd ever done anything like that, across the old Severn Bridge. Got some nice pictures of it in the archways of the bridge. A bit of a marathon as far as we were concerned, but nonetheless successfully achieved. Got the bus back to Winchester, and so on that day of the 419 tour, unannounced, as the people were sitting on 419 waiting to go, what should appear but 104. Drove over the Bridge Street into the Broadway, and there was a complete restored King Alfred bus, to everybody's amazement and surprise. It wasn't actually taxed at this point, it had to be on trade plates. We hadn't managed to get it an MOT at that point, and it shadowed the tour for several trips on the day, and we have some pictures of it. Well, it was very convincing. I mean, it looked the part. And then it was home in Winchester. I wasn't, of course, I was working in South Wales. So me and Bus were in different parts of the country, but nonetheless, it was the right for it to be in Hampshire. That was the right place for it to be. We had a place to park it in the Hampshire County Museum Services yard at Chilcombe. And so it was quite safe, although it was out of doors. Various jobs were done to it. The principal thing was that it needed really a lot of work doing on it. I talked to my friend Leon Daniels, who at the time was running Obsolete Fleet, an operation in London. They had a garage at Nunhead in southeast London where they were prepared to take on restoration, preservation type work. One of the people working with Leon at the time was Tim Nicholson. He has been a long time supporter of Friends of King Alfred Buses since its formation in 1985. He was completely involved, doing a magnificent and massive job on this bus. What basically we had to do was to find another Tiger Cub that would donate its major parts. And he discovered a Tiger Cub belonging to Edward Thomas and Sons of West Ewell in southwest London, WLO 692. And we purchased this vehicle, or rather we purchased the chassis of it. The body had already been stripped off by Edward Thomas. That chassis was used to donate its engine and its gearbox and various other parts so that this vehicle could be put back into order. That was a huge job. It took many months, but what emerged from that then was a sound, operational, dependable vehicle. Now, it didn't have a 350 engine as originally specified. It had a 375 because that was the coach engine, and it also had an Albion gearbox rather than a Leyland one, but at least it worked. Now, the Albion box sounded quite a lot different, and so Albion gearboxed Leyland Tiger Cubs have a bit of a whine about them, which is not present with a proper 350 engined Leyland gearboxed Tiger Cub. But nonetheless, what we had was an operational vehicle, fully fit and ready to go. Its first appearance was on the 3rd of March 1983, when we really started what became Friends of King Alfred Buses' great running days. So the very first event where we said, come on our restored bus, it's going to operate scheduled, timetabled journeys. We took the King Alfred timetable 1973 and we decided which journeys we were going to operate, and we said these are the ones we're going to do. Stanmore, Sparsholt. We did the 11:30 to Basingstoke and back, so that was a 3.5 hour round trip, and various other trips. We said anybody can come, it's free rides of course, just the sort of setup that we have today on our running days, and in fact we're ubiquitous. But back in 1983 this was very new and quite unknown. Restored buses weren't available to ride on generally, so this was a first. We did well with publicity. It was televised. We had both Mr. Bob and Mr. Fred Chisnell, the original the managing directors of the old business. We had Mr. Sincock, the traffic manager, Mr. Isles, the first conductor of King Alfred buses back in 1922, and a busload of people. And we had one of Robert Jowett's Renaults along as well to give a bit of support and provide extra capacity. And we had a great day. Oh, and by the way, we had Blondie as a conductress. Now, Blondie, as she was called, May Boyce, she was a conductress that joined King Alfred during the war, and she stayed with the firm right through till about 1969-70. She was a bit of a character, basically, and she volunteered to come out of retirement and be the conductress for the day. So I drove the bus, she conducted it. We had a fantastic time. And that was the beginning, really, of running days, and what led to the creation of the Friends of King Alfred Buses. We've told the story of 104 finding it and then using it on its first outing with passengers on board. It was so good that in March 1984, a year later, we repeated the exercise, by which time I'd acquired a second double-decker, Leyland Atlantean, 591 in fact, and we ran 2 buses. Then we had commensurately more people, and it was more of an event, obviously, because then buses could pass, and we started to see what might be like if we had lots of buses. It was those people coming on those trips which provided us with the basis for the creation of FOCAB in 1985, because I had come to the conclusion that doing this on my own, not living in Winchester, was too much like hard work, really. So I put a slightly tongue-in-the-cheek advert in the local press saying King Alfred buses going to scrap unless we get some help, and inviting people to come to a meeting in the King Alfred pub in Arthur Road in Winchester, very appropriate name, in 1985, March 1985 roughly. Well, we waited to see who would come, and to my surprise and I must say delight, we had about 35 people turn up, and they were all the big names and sensible people. It was decided there and then that we would form a group called the Friends of King Alfred Buses, so the name was agreed right there. The first subscriptions were taken, and we appointed the basic officers, the secretary, the treasurer, chairman, that was me at the time, and FOCAB was born. Now, that's aside from the history of this bus really, but it's important because of course FOCAB has meant that this bus and so many more King Alfred buses have not only survived but have been restored to full working order. That's something we're very proud of. But 104, this bus, is the one that started it all, and in so many ways therefore it's my favourite and many people's favourite